have to play it by ear and keep an eye on the batch and listen to your yeast rather than say, okay, let it rise for 2 hours and you're good. You have to actually wait for it. At least that's what I found with it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So I'm really excited about this new yeast. I've been watching you posting about it. Kind of waiting to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what I get out of the test trials that I want to put it through as well. I mean, for me, I'm kind of thinking it in a way, well, maybe this could be a new house yeast for us. Maybe I can mainly use it if I want to do a sour mead. So let's say, for example, I add whatever bacteria, or bugs I want into my must, straight off the bat to just get the souring aspect of it done. And then throw this yeast in that is going to be able to ferment. It's still going to be able to ferment a decent amount of alcohol at that low of a pH. Because in that way, I could also go around, especially on the commercial side of things, you have to think about it. It's like, if you want to go the sour mead route, you either need your own separate tank for your sour meads, you need your own separate line, your own separate pump, your own separate bottle filler. I would never do a sour mead and try to bottle it through my, fancy automated bottling line. There's no freaking way I'm introducing bacteria, that kind of bacteria into my bottling line.
Yeah. Because
you're just going to cross-contaminate everything, or at least have a risk of cross-contaminating everything. So with that in mind, I'm thinking maybe this could be a really great thing for the whole sour mead world. So if I end up sharing it with anybody, it's going to be Frank at Golden Coast first, and then me and him will decide whether we're going to release it to the public. But it could be a really cool sour mead yeast. So you could drop the pH, do everything up front, and then basically do what the breweries do when they do kettle souring. So they don't want to cross-contaminate anything either, even more so than wineries. Beer is, they don't even touch it after it goes into the fermenter. Then it's just like, don't let it see the light of day as far as oxygen goes.
Yeah.
In the mead world, it's a little different, the wine world. But, the beer world, they're, heavy on sanitation, and for good reason. But if there, a lot of breweries that will do sour beer, unless they specialize in sour beer and ferment in barrels, most of the time they do kettle souring. So essentially they mash their grain, transfer, do their watering, do their sparge, and transfer everything into their boil kettle. And before they start boiling it, they'll pitch their lacto or whatever else they want to add into their batch to actually sour it. Let it sit for X amount of hours or 20, or a day or two until they get the desired outcome. And then they go through their boil process. Essentially, you're killing off any of those bugs that are in your work during the boil process. Then you don't have to worry about infecting anything. Your lines, pump, any other tanks, nothing. So essentially, that's what I'm kind of thinking as far as this yeast could be used for, if not anything else, is do a sour mead. Maybe you only use a third of the honey that you're planning on using up front. Boil off whatever souring organisms that you added in. Let it come up to room temperature, or use a heat exchanger to cool it back down. Then add the rest of your honey, pitch your yeast as normal, and call it a day. But if it's at a low pH, most wine yeasts are not going to even start up for it. But this yeast will. So if not anything else, it has a really great potential for being used as a sour mead yeast.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I get where you're saying with that. Definitely we're going to have to take some experimentation to see how it can be implemented, not just in experimental batches, but in a commercial environment. Because I know that there was a meadery not too long ago that they had basically an accident, and they have a mead that may or may not end up turning into 250 gallons of vinegar.
Oh, so, yeah, I read that. Yeah,
I saw that too. It was like, oh, ouch.
Yeah, that blows. And most of the time, the only time that's ever happened to me when a batch of meat is ever spoiled at home, or never had a batch of meat spoiled at the meadery, but at home, the only time that ever happened was a session mead. You know, the lower alcohol you are, the more susceptible it is to getting infected. That's why the breweries take sanitation to the fullest extent.
Yeah, I definitely believe that, because the only batches I've ever had that have gone wonky have been lower alcohol batches, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you get into your 10, 11, especially 12 to 14%, I mean, I'm not going to say you're in the clear, but more or less you are.
You're clearer, yeah.
Yeah, much lower risk of anything getting infected.
Yeah, a lot lower potential there. So, for Back to Basics tonight, we figured we'd do Braggots, since you just did a co-brew with another company, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name of the company.
Yeah, Demented Brewing Company.
Demented Brewing.
Really great. It was a very awesome brewery.
That's really cool. So tell us more about your Braggot, and then we can talk Braggots, because there's a lot of folks out there who want to play with them and don't know as much about them as they'd like.
Yeah, so do I. I never really made too many Braggots at home. I did during my crossover from beer to mead, way before I even started making knew what mead was. For whatever reason, during my beer brewing days at home, I was just always fascinated about using honey in a beer for some reason.
That makes sense.
It got to the point where, you know, I made a few at home. None of them were really all that great, to be honest. Nothing that I was ever looking to repeat. Then I kind of came to realize, well, I'll say this for a little bit later, but talking about the actual collaboration that I did, and I'm working with different breweries in New Jersey too, so I'm doing multiple Braggot collaborations with different breweries around the state, which is awesome. And so for this one in particular, we did it with Demented Brewing. They're in Middlesex, New Jersey. The owner, Tom, is actually part of my homebrew club as well, so I've known him for a little while. And we basically did a Belgian triple fermented with clover honey. And, I mean, it is incredible. It's finishing gravity was 1018. It's at 8.5% alcohol. It has, a really, really awesome, Belgian-y phenolic character to it from the yeast specifically. And the taste is just, the perfect balance of, malty, the sweetness from the malt and the residual sweetness from the honey definitely kind of just balance each other back and forth with it, with everything that's great about a Belgian beer. It really was an incredible beer. We did a 1-barrel batch of it at the brewery. It's kind of he's never done a Braggot. I've never really made a good Braggot. So we kind of said, all right, let's go for a 1-barrel batch. We're going to put it in the tap room and see how it does. And it actually just went on tap this past Sunday, and it basically all went in one day, or 2 days rather. It kicked on Monday, and so now basically we're already in talks about, all right, now let's go for real. Let's do a 10-barrel batch. So here comes 310 gallons of a Belgian triple Braggot. And we're going to bottle it up, put it on tap again at the tap room, but we're going to bottle it up and distribute it as well. So that's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to be putting a New Jersey-made Braggot on the store shelves all over the state.
Nice.
Yeah. And now we're working with Kane Brewing, which is one of the most popular craft breweries in the state. They don't really do anything bottled. They mainly just do, their tap room at the brewery, and they distribute kegs here and there. Very little can sales, but mainly all direct from the brewery. But whenever they have a bottle release, this is the brewery that people just line up around the corner at 8 or 9 a.m., and the brewery opens at 12. And they're just lining up outside of the brewery to get their bottles. They're very popular. We're about to do a double IPA with honey. Which we're going to be calling Honey Dippa, which is very appropriate for this Braggot. So that I'm really excited about. Double IPA with honey sounds amazing to me. And then we're also working with Cypress Brewing. These guys have come really close with me. Cypress Brewing in Edison, New Jersey. I actually gave them 2 of my barrels that I aged, my bourbon barrel-aged orange blossom honey mead in. And they're filling up each of the 2 barrels with a different beer. So they're basically just kind of aging beer in a mead barrel, essentially, that was previously bourbon barrels. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And we're going to be working on a Braggot collaboration with them as well pretty soon.
Nice. So you
So
got a lot going on.
really, dabbling into the collaboration scene, and we even have a distillery, an awesome distillery here in New Jersey that we're going to do a collaboration with too, either honey vodka or I'm trying to get them to do a honey rum, dark honey rum. That would be pretty interesting, but they're all on board for doing a collaboration with us as well. So a lot of really cool, like tight knit, craft community here in New Jersey, which is also always pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it, man. That's just amazing. So, I mean, what did you learn when you were making? I mean, you were making Braggots before you went pro, and didn't know you were making Braggots at the time. But what observations or commentary can you put out there for people to be aware of?
All right, so I might get knocked for this, which I always get knocked for stuff that I believe in with the mead purists, but essentially my feeling is, my opinion, which is only mine, unless you share it, is I think a Braggot is better off as a honey beer rather than a mead with malt. And especially commercially, and I'll at least qualify it commercially as well, there is nobody that is in this country that is allowed to make a true Braggot, which a true Braggot is supposed to be a mead with malt, not a beer with honey. That's a honey beer, essentially. But, the term, most people don't even know what the hell a Braggot is, so the term is used rather loosely anyway. But by definition, it should be a mead with malt. So at least 51% of the fermentable should come from honey if you technically wanted to call it a Braggot in the real, well, not the real world, but technically. But I feel a Braggot is better off as a beer with a lot of honey in it. So put it this way. This was the first Braggot that I've ever done that came out extremely well. It fermented out perfect. The taste was right on point. And essentially our whole idea was, let's just go with focusing on a really good formulation for the beer style that we want to use as the base. And we formulated the perfect recipe formula for that, for a Belgian triple ale. And we're just going to add 35% honey to the fermentables on top of that. And that's essentially what we did, more or less. So we fermented that out. We got what we got. We managed fermentation temperature. We controlled everything. And in 2 weeks, it was ready to basically get transferred and kegged up and put on tap within 3 weeks. So 3 weeks in, I'm telling you, it's the best Braggot I've ever tasted, both commercially and homebrewed. Well, not that I can compare. Not that my homebrewed stuff really stood up too much, but even commercially, it was the best Braggot I've ever tasted.
Nice.
Yeah, because you still get the honey character. You get the sweetness and you get the aroma. Even like in the aftertaste, you kind of got like a taste of what honey smells like. That's the perfect description I could kind of give it. It was just like the perfect beverage and the perfect marriage between the two as far as chemistry wise, as what you get out of the beer. If I entered this into a competition as a Braggot, it would win gold for sure, in my opinion. It was the perfect example of the beer style while still representing a really great, almost mead character as well.
That's kind of how I've approached it when I've made Braggots too.
Yeah, I think that's the best route to take. And now I probably have 50 Facebook messages and posts on my Melovino personal Facebook account about, how dare you? Yeah.
Well, there's something here called a barley wine, but I haven't actually looked into exactly what they do with it. And I believe they put honey in it. But I'm not sure exactly what they've done with that one, and I think it is made under the aegis of the beer brewers rather than the winemakers or the mead makers.
Yeah, out here barley wine is
Yeah.
is a legal designation for high alcohol.